Hello and welcome to the Hack Your Career live stream. This is our first AttackIQ live stream, and we're going to start a new series here. We're starting with a new series we're calling Hack Your Career, and this comes out of AttackIQ Academy. My name's Keith Wilson. For those of you that don't know, I am the Director of Cybersecurity Education for AttackIQ, and my role has really given me a chance to connect with a lot of newcomers to cybersecurity and cybersecurity students too. There's plenty of people that are joining Academy and posting on LinkedIn that are part of the university training in cybersecurity. And it's really nice to get that fresh perspective of what it's like for a newcomer nowadays. It's been so long since I was new to cybersecurity. So it's always interesting seeing how that dynamic is changing. But one thing that I've noticed through all of these connections is a singular mindset on penetration testing. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's a good goal, but it's a really long goal to achieve, right? Most penetration testing jobs aren't entry level, and they require a good amount of experience that you collect through all these other roles in cybersecurity. So my idea is to expose all of you to different roles in cybersecurity, and the different journeys people have taken to get there, from their first role in cybersecurity to what they're doing now. And I'm going to talk to people from all over and all levels of cybersecurity doing different things. And the idea here is to expose you to all these different things and shift you out of that not knowing what you don't know phase into the knowing what you don't know phase, where you have all of these options that you can choose from. But the good news is you've also heard all of these stories too of how people have succeeded or even made mistakes and had failures along the way. And I think that's really important to expose to everybody. So with that being said, our first guest this week, and I'm super excited to have her. She's a new addition to the AttackIQ team and my team, specifically for AttackIQ Academy, our new cybersecurity education manager, Beverly Benson. Hey, Bev,
Hello.
how's it going?
How are you? I love the warm welcome. Thank you.
And I love how we have to pretend like we haven't talked already today, because Bev and I talk constantly since the first day she started here. So we've already gotten to know each other pretty well. But I'm excited for this interview because it's going to give me even more of an insight into her background, some questions that maybe we didn't really get to go in during the formal interview when you first started here. So I'm really excited to learn more about you and your career and the path you've taken to get here. So great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
All right. So let's go ahead and start. I guess, one of the best places to start is what were you doing before cybersecurity? I personally know that you were working in IT. So can you tell me a little bit more about what you were doing in IT?
Sure.
Right before you got into cybersecurity or started having more cybersecurity responsibility?
Absolutely. So in IT, I was doing cybersecurity before it was called cybersecurity. It was so cybersecurity is a really cool word and I love it. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of cybersecurity was part of what you did as your normal day-to-day responsibilities. And so I was managing a team of individuals that were supporting financial application support. So we were responsible to make sure that, the applications were up and running properly. And, if things went wrong, then we were doing the troubleshooting to help get those applications back online.
Okay, so you were starting with kind of application support for IT.
Application, right. So I was a team lead. I managed the team. Correct.
Yeah. And at the time, so for those that are newer to cybersecurity, there wasn't a separate cybersecurity division within IT, right? It was all just IT, and you had these responsibilities that were security based. And you didn't have this designation of cybersecurity analyst or incident responder or penetration tester. There wasn't really any of that. It was just IT. They set the firewall rules. They wrote policy on restricting things. They ran Active Directory and all these different things. In your case, you were working with applications. Were you guys doing anything around application security at the time?
We were supporting the no, so we were not doing application security, but what I was required to do is to make sure that the members of my team had the permissions, which we and now in cybersecurity we we refer to as the least privilege. So giving them the access to the tools and systems that they only needed to do their job. So nothing more, no elevated. Only get what you need to perform your daily tasks.
Got it. So you were learning these security principles before they were, codified as security principles.
Before they were called like a domain, right? I was learning security principles.
So was it those things, like those little security things, that kind of nudge you more towards specializing in cybersecurity? Because at that point, you still could very much take two routes. You could go into infrastructure and IT, or databases, or all sorts of different stuff on the IT side. And cybersecurity is just now starting to splinter off. So was there something in particular that kind of nudged you in the direction of cybersecurity?
Yes. Well, I was always I'm considered myself a life learner, and so I'm very interested in learning new things. However, my personal information was compromised, and I felt there was a need for me to better understand what happened and how I could help prevent it in the future. And so that was what kind of set that process moving. And I decided to go back to school and to get a master's degree in cybersecurity management.
So you had a personal tie to it.
I had a personal experience.
Yeah. I did too. I was in cybersecurity at the time, but I did too. But that introduced me to the whole concept of not just cybersecurity, but fraud in general. And now we see the two linked together, right?
Yes.
So you took that personal experience, you took the experience that you gained from doing the cybersecurity stuff in IT. Let's see. What did your professional network look like at the time? Like when you were, and let me set this up a little bit better on timeline now. So if we think in terms of timeline, we go to that IT role to a definitive cybersecurity role. And I believe your definitive cybersecurity role, one where cybersecurity was in the title, right? That was in education, correct?
It was. Yes.
So you took that master's degree and leveraged that into a role at American Women's College at Bay Path University. I had to look that up.
Yes. Yes. So, once I got my master's degree, and I'm glad that I can share this with you all, it was not easy to get into a role with the title cyber.
Yeah. Why was that?
Because there is a belief that you must have years of experience and a technical capacity. And I felt like there was an opportunity for me as a woman to be able to, help make that shift, to help explain how my current skill set could be transferable into the field of cybersecurity. For example, one of the things that an individual in cybersecurity is really important, that in addition to having that technical background, it's important that you are become a very good communicator, that you can explain key concepts in layman's terms, because not everyone that you will work with in the field of cybersecurity is going to be a techie, a very technical aptitude person. So I was able to utilize a lot of the skill sets that I learned: problem solving, the curiosity to understand how things work. I was able to use a lot of the skill sets that I had, and I wanted to see more women get into that field. And so I transitioned into higher education.
So you, again, took that personal experience of going, well, it's harder to find a cyber-specific role now because they're looking for cyber-specific skills that you had some of those, but you didn't check off all the boxes with focused experience, right? So you leveraged that and said, I'm going to help other people do this, which is great. You took that as a motivator and said, I'm going to help other people do this. And that's awesome. What did I want to back up just a couple steps, right? Because you said it was difficult getting this role.
It's very difficult.
What did your professional network look like at the time? Were you using LinkedIn? Were you talking to people at conferences? What were you doing to build? Because as you know, like that's a big part of your career is networking. It's a lot about who you know and not just what you know. So what did your network look like when you were,
Yes.
and did you leverage it at all to get that role?
Absolutely. So that's a really good question. So my network were the individuals that I worked with. I was at a financial services company. I had not gone to any cybersecurity conferences. So I had yet to experience what that world is like. I have since attended some, and let me tell you, they're fantastic. And I would recommend them for anyone that you want to learn and be able to meet people who are like-minded and get excited and have that passion about cybersecurity. So my network were the people that were around me. And so what I did was I asked someone that was in cybersecurity to become my mentor because I wanted to learn more about it. And one of the things that I learned that I now pass on to my students and anyone that will listen is I help to demystify cybersecurity because, we watch our television shows and I love my CSI. But cybersecurity is so much more than someone sitting in a basement with a hoodie on coding. It's so much more than that. And I think there are a lot of individuals that may kind of shy away from the field because that's their understanding as to what they'll be doing on a day-to-day basis. I'm here to say, go for cyber. You will be so amazed at how well you'll do and the skill sets and also things that you kind of do each day. I think that we perform, risk analysis. We do that every day. We decide, okay, well, what is the risk of me going outside and it raining? Well, what are some of the things that I can do to prevent me from getting wet? That's a control. That's an umbrella, maybe your rain boots, and maybe your rain jacket, and maybe leave early. So I think that we do some of the cybersecurity related activities on a daily basis.
I never thought of it like that, but we do kind of practice a lot of that stuff in our day-to-day lives.
We do.
And I do. I joke with friends and relatives and stuff about how I can be over analytical on risk sometimes. And the people that work with me probably run into this too, where they suggest an idea and I suggest 10 things that could possibly go wrong, maybe only 2 of which are actual possibilities, right? So it's interesting to hear that point of view from another person, because I never thought about that, about how much we actually do apply cybersecurity in our daily lives, right?
We
And
do.
where it goes from day to day. Now, I heard you say something interesting in there too. You talked about you asked for a mentor. This
Yes.
is something that I've always struggled with, and I assume other people have too, because it's not really widely talked about how do you build, like, how do you just ask a mentor? You just tap somebody on the shoulder and be like, would you mentor me? Because I don't feel like that's the way that it works. I could be wrong. So I'm always interested in, and I've had mentors, I still do, but it's never been a formal thing where it's, will you mentor me, right? I've never had that. I have people that have guided me, that have helped me with decision making and things like that, but never like a formal mentor relationship. So tell me how you set that up. How did that work?
So for my first mentor, it was an individual that was in IT performing security related tasks. And so I really got to know her as a leader, as a friend, and as an individual. And so I set up, sent her an email and just said, hey, can we have lunch? Let's have lunch. And I shared what my interests were. And I asked if she could help guide me. And so, yes, it can be very informal. It can start off as a friendship, or it can be, there are organizations that offer formal mentoring programs where you have a specific timeline that you're going to be, be mentored by an individual, and you have a matching of, what a cybersecurity expert, what their expertise is, and then you as the individual who needs their guidance, what you're looking for. But for me, my first mentors were very informal, me just saying, hey, let's go out to lunch. I'd love to learn more about what you do and what kind of skill sets that you need to do that particular role, and how maybe that could be a possibility for me.
And so would you say that mentorship ended up having a big impact on you?
It did. It did. And so I really want to first explain the difference between a mentor and a sponsor. And so I think that individuals oftentimes confuse the two. Your mentor is someone that is going to help guide you and give you guidance and give you advice. And also, sometimes you need a swift kick in the butt if you're not doing what you're supposed to do. Someone that's going to hold you accountable. And then you have a sponsor. Now, a sponsor is someone that will, when they're having these really important meetings and they're looking for or talking about key talent, that sponsor is someone that can, hey, say, do you know Bev Benson? And here's some of the things that she's capable of doing. So they're speaking on your behalf.
They're your champion.
They're your champion.
Yeah, they're there to sell for you when you're not in the room.
Yes. But I needed a mentor.
Yes. Awesome. Well, I think that's kind of a good lesson takeaway for anybody listening, right? Is mentorship's important.
It's very important.
It's incredibly important. Maybe we should do a separate show at some point just on mentorship, because it is super important. But I think nobody's really talks about how to go about getting a mentor and what that relationship looks like, because it's not all just, you just learn from this person. That's it. Like, it's a give and take relationship, right?
It really is, because it's an opportunity for you to share a little bit of yourself, and you also learn about the mentor. And I find that it's a partnership, and you need the mentee, which is the person that I was. So I was the one needing that guidance. So I needed to own and take responsibility for that interaction. By that, I mean, I was the one responsible to schedule the meetings. I came to those meetings with an agenda. If I left the meetings with an action item, the next time we met, I had a result. I had some type of proof that I had taken steps that I promised to, because you're taking of someone's time and their talents. And it's something that you really should take seriously.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's a relationship that you have to respect and cultivate, just like any sort of relationship.
Absolutely.
Okay. So let's jump back now to where, before we deviated there for a minute. So we're at your first cybersecurity role as program director for information and technology and security at Bay Path University, right? Yes. Bay Path University, American Women's College at Bay Path University.
I know that's a mouthful.
Yes. So, and we talked about, how your personal experience kind of inspired you for that role. Now, let's talk about how you actually landed that role, right? Because you talked about how difficult it was to find a role that would be accepting of your background, even though it didn't have a cybersecurity specific focus.
Yes.
And I think this is pertinent to a lot of the people listening, because it's a situation that a lot of them are in right now.
Yeah. Here's what I want to share. I want to share that oftentimes when you're looking at, job postings, I refer to them as they're looking for the unicorn candidate. They're going to ask, even maybe in an entry role, and they will ask for oftentimes maybe 3 to 5 years of experience. Or they may have a list of items that you maybe meet 75 or 80% of those requirements. I would, if you take nothing else from me, I say, dare to dream, throw your hat in the ring. If you meet, I'd say 70% of the requirements, then apply. I would say make sure that you apply. And so it was interesting, that this role was recommended to me by a friend. And I said, I'm not sure if this is for me. I don't have higher education experience. But what I did have, and they reminded me of, are those other skills: collaboration, leadership experience, a passion for learning, a passion for helping others. And I had, while I wasn't, I had also had experience with being in higher ed. I had just finished my master's degree. It was like throw your hat in the ring. And so I did. Yeah. And it was amazing that I got the call back, and I had several interviews, and I was awarded that role. And it was one of the most fantastic experiences that I've had thus far working.
So your advice then, just to summarize, if you meet 70% of those requirements that you see, go ahead and apply and see what happens.
See what happens. You have nothing to lose.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're going to miss 100% of the shots you don't take. But at the same time, also don't get discouraged when you don't get those positions, right? Because you're taking a dream shot and hoping it's going to land. The idea is that one of these it's eventually going to land, but some of them, you're not going to even get that first interview, and you just have to take that and just roll forward, right? It's a strategy that works. It's not for the faint of heart or people that get discouraged easily, but it works really well. I can attest to that same sort of strategy for my career as well, right? You take the job that you want, that you can grow into, that you think you're going to be a good fit for, and you sell yourself on that role.
Yes. And you also commit to learning. I think being a part
Yes.
of the
Oh,
field
you
of
have to.
cybersecurity is that you have to commit. You're never going to arrive, right? Because technology is advancing so very rapidly. So there you have the commitment to be a life learner. And so if there is aspects of the job that you are in, then you learn, you upskill yourself. You own that responsibility of learning what you don't know.
So let's talk about starting with what you did know, though, when you got into
Okay.
that role. How did you translate your past skills into this new role in cybersecurity? You'd had pieces of that. You
I
didn't
did.
have the full 100% matching, right, of every
Correct.
single thing they needed, but you did have skills. And how'd you take those skills, hard skills or soft skills, and translate those into that role?
Absolutely. Okay, good question. So my skills that were transferable, I talked about the leadership skills because I had been in a leadership role, several leadership roles for many years. So I had the ability to lead a team, to inspire others. And so that was really important. I also had experience with cybersecurity because I had just gotten my master's degree in cybersecurity. And my concentration was in digital forensics and incident response. And that at the time was the degree that I was the program that I was going to be managing. That was a degree offering a degree in cybersecurity, but it was at an undergraduate level. I also was able to transfer over virtual. I had two teams as in some of my roles. I had two teams. So I had a team in Connecticut and I had a team in Florida. And so being able to virtually manage individuals is a skill set that I was able to bring to the table. And because
highly applicable now in 2021, by the way.
right. We're all working remote, or at least most of us are. Yes. So being able to, keep your team engaged and also make sure that the daily tasks get done, I had that skill set that I was able to bring along with me.
So what challenges did you face in that role? Everybody has failures and mistakes and challenges, right? So what sort of challenges did you face in that role? Obviously, you weren't 100% qualified. Nobody ever is 100% qualified for a role, by the way. Like you're never going to be 100% qualified for a role. Won't happen. And that's just because companies ask for too much sometimes, right?
Again, that unicorn candidate. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So obviously there were things you didn't know when you first started, and you're going to make mistakes. So
absolutely.
Let's hear about some of those.
All right. So one of the things that I didn't know when I got into this role was how to create a course.
Okay.
I was a student, so I knew how to take a course and how to complete my assignments, but I didn't know how to create a course. And so I had to really quickly ramp up on different taxonomies and different theories of how to get people. How do you encourage someone to learn? How do you assess what they have learned? Mm-hmm. So I was able to ramp up really quickly on that. And it became something that I really, really enjoyed doing. Another thing that I had no experience in was leadership as it applies to the higher education. So I had to learn about rules and laws such as FERPA, which is, a privacy law that applies to students that are in higher ed. So I had to ramp up on that type of thing. And let's see, did I make a mistake? Trying to think of one that I'm comfortable sharing. I think, what, there are things that we can all do better.
Of course.
And so in creating my very first course, there was an opportunity for me to do something better. In my opportunity to teach my first course, there was opportunities for me to do things better. So I had to learn to engage my students because I was teaching online. My class was 100% online. Students would take those classes at their leisure. Most of my students were working full-time moms. So I had to learn how to create an assignment in such a way that the student wanted to complete it, that the student got some learnings from it, and also that I was challenging my students.
That's great. I want to pause here to mention too that if anybody in the chat that's watching this live has questions for Bev or myself, please drop them in chat. and we'll try and get to them at some point during this interview. Maybe by the end, maybe if they make sense, we'll drop them in at some other point. But if you do have questions, put them in. Alexis and Jordan are watching that for me. They're going to give us your questions if you've got them. So, we talked about your entry into cybersecurity, how you were already kind of doing a lot of cybersecurity stuff in IT.
Yes.
And then you leveraged a network, a mentor, using that to bring you into this other role of instruction. And now you're here. Now you're with me. Now we get you at AttackIQ. Did you leverage any lessons you learned from the last role, from the instructor role, or I'm sorry, the program director role, when you came to AttackIQ and interviewed for AttackIQ Academy?
I did.
And since you've been here, so for those that don't know, Bev started, you're probably in your third week now, right? With AttackIQ?
No, it's actually, I'm approaching my 1 month.
Approaching 1 month.
Approaching 1 month.
So you've had some time too to understand where those lessons learned may translate into this role. So let's talk about that. Did you leverage any of the lessons that you learned from your previous role? I won't even say just your previous role. The last one you had, plus all the other ones before it. Did you leverage that when you came to apply for this role?
Absolutely, I did. And one lesson, one piece of information that I leveraged was being comfortable being me. Being comfortable being me. And by that, I mean, everybody else is taken, so I can only be Bev, right? And so I come to work with the full essence of who I am. I am an African-American woman. I am a mom. I am a daughter. I am a sister. I am a grandmother. And so with that, I'm a nurturing person. And so I bring all that to work because it's part of who I am, and it helps me to be creative and innovative.
Yeah, I talk about, I've talked in interviews and in meetings and stuff that we have about teaching with empathy. And when I interviewed you, and since we've had a time to even get to know each other better, I can definitely tell I made a good decision on that side, right? Because you're very down to earth. You're yourself. You don't try and pretend to be something you're not. I can tell you're also an empathetic person too, which in my mind makes for a great teacher, by the way. When you can put yourself in the shoes of your students, you end up teaching things a lot better, right? You can go back and remember what that's like. And since you got your master's degree, for you, that wasn't terribly long ago either.
It wasn't. No, it wasn't. And I was actually, when I started my, and I want to share a story that one of the jobs that I applied for before going to Bay Path, I was told that I wasn't technical enough. And so I could have used that information, that feedback, and feedback is a gift, right? And you can choose to do what you want to do with it. So I could have said, well, I'm not even going to receive that. But I did receive the feedback. And I said, okay, here is an area of a development for me. And so I went back to school and I got my second master's degree in a more technical area. So my second master's degree is in computer information technology with a concentration in networking. So I said, okay, let's cross that off the list. Now I can program a router and a switch, and I know what those things are. And so I use feedback that may not have been pleasant for the ears, but I use them as fuel to say, I can succeed in this field of cybersecurity, and I am willing to fill whatever knowledge gaps that I have, because I need to be able to show other women that it can be done.
That's a great point, Bev. That is a great point. I struggle with this too, right? Taking feedback, critical feedback, the right way. Not that I get angry about it or anything like that, but internally it always stings a bit, right? When somebody tells you you're not good enough, or you're lacking something, and they may not even mean it in like a derogatory way. They could simply mean it in like, hey, if you improve in these couple things, you'd be a great candidate. Yes. Right. And that's really the way we should look at those interactions.
Absolutely.
So we do have a question for the audience. I have my thoughts on this, but I'm going to let you answer first. Is certification mandatory to get a job?
I think that it depends on the employer. I think with right now, with the field that, cybersecurity, it is very robust. I think having some basic knowledge is important. Having experience is great. Having, if we're looking at a sundae, an ice cream sundae, having certification is like a cherry on the top. So I think
Yeah.
it depends on the role that you're aspiring to do.
So for me, what certifications do is they help tell me you have a baseline of knowledge of something, maybe, right? What they do mean for you for sure is I'm going to dig down deep into those in interviews if I think they're essential, to find out if you actually learned something from them or not.
Yes.
Because I've had experiences before, for this role, I haven't really had to hire anybody at an entry level thing where certificates would make any sort of a difference. In a previous role I did, though, where I was hiring a lot of students at a college and things like that. And I would get resumes that would be plastered with Cisco logos all over it, right? Of all these different things they knew. And then I'd ask them questions, very basic Cisco questions that anybody who's passed the CCNA should be able to tell you, right? And they couldn't do it, right? So that puts that negative spin on certification sometimes. With that being said, it's good to have them to let the interviewer know, like, I am capable in these areas. But if you are not prepared to answer questions in those areas, maybe the certification isn't something you should be talking about, because that could be a negative part of your experience, right? You could start getting asked a line of questioning of things that you're not too certain of, and that'll make you look weaker in terms of the interview. I don't know that I've ever seen any employers require a mandatory certification. I see a lot of them recommending it or that, but I don't see a lot of posts. And I don't hear a lot of talk of employers that say you have to have this certification in order to get the job.
It depends on the employer. I think right now, the gold standard, sought after certification is the CISSP. I myself do not have the certification. It is one that I would love to go for.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that a lot of employers may not understand what it takes to be awarded that certification. So I have seen where on the job profile it will say CISSP, and someone needs to have 5 years of experience in several domains or sectors of that knowledge to be able to qualify for that CISSP designation.
Right.
And so I think it's important to understand that. So I think that for me, I do have one certification. I'm going to call it the little sister to the CISSP, which is the SSCP.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I liked studying for that. But here's the thing: I study for the knowledge. I don't always study for getting that piece of paper. I don't want to check off.
That's the important part.
I want to be a better cybersecurity professional.
Yeah. So knowledge is always going to be greater than that piece of paper or the badge or whatever, right? So I'm definitely not knocking certifications by any means. They're a great way to test and underscore and evaluate even your understanding of things. The CISSP, I actually recommend. I've had people ask me, well, what cert should I study for? And the reality is you don't necessarily need to study for a cert getting into, like, don't focus on that. Like, understand when you're just getting in, understand all the different just underlying technology that goes into, all the stuff that you have to protect, learn how that works.
Yes.
Right. And use that knowledge to build up. However, I do, if somebody's dead set on going, well, I only learn by studying for certs. Okay. I do recommend the CISSP because it's always described as an inch deep and a mile wide.
Yes.
It's just kind of touching the surface of all of these different areas in cybersecurity. And I like that because it gives you exposure to all of these different areas in cybersecurity, and that can inform your learning or your career choices too. And I'll be honest on this show. I suck at encryption. I am horrible at encryption. I never do well when it comes to testing on encryption. I have a very difficult time explaining it. I'm not good with encryption. The CISSP was my first indicator that I was not good with encryption. Right. Studying for that. And I was like, okay, with that being said, I have worked to learn more about encryption, but it also informed me early on of, one, this is something I don't know, and two, like, do I even really want to know it? Is it an area that I'm interested in?
Right.
Because that's important too. I don't think people talk about that enough in their careers. Like, find something you actually enjoy. And with cybersecurity, there's a whole bunch of things.
A whole bunch of things. Yes. Yeah. I totally agree. And that's why I say, it's important that like you have indicated, do what you like, right? Be willing to expose yourself to new things. You'd be surprised, what skills, what capabilities that you may not have now, but that you would grow from.
That's a great point. All right, Bev, I think we're at a point where we're going to wrap this up. Did you have any final thoughts you want to leave the audience with?
Yes. I would love to just encourage everyone, dare to dream. If cybersecurity is the field that you want to be in, go for it. Do not accept no for an answer. And if you can't get the door to open, build your own house.
There you go. All right, Bev. Thank you so much for being on.
You.
I look forward to seeing you guys in our next episode. So we're going to do these every other week. So not next Tuesday, but the following Tuesday. We're always going to do them at 12 Eastern. And our next guest is one that may be known by most of you. Mr. Neil Bridges from the Cyber and Security stream and INE is going to be on. We're going to talk about his career, how he got in, how he got to where he is now. So if you don't know that story, or you're really just interested in learning more, I know Neil's always a fun interview. He's going to be on next week. So make sure, in 2 weeks. So make sure you check that out. With that being said, Alexis, count us out.